Hi folks, I'm Father Joe Grimaldi. You can call me Joe, and I'd like to welcome you to my podcast. But now, here's our host and friend, Ken Calvert.
Hi everybody, I'm Ken Calvert, alongside my good friend Father Joe Grimaldi. The Father Joe Grimaldi podcast, proudly supported by Hoot McInerney Star Lincoln, 12 Mile Road and Telegraph in Southfield. Hoot believe that true luxury should play a bigger role in your life, not just behind the wheel of your vehicle, but also about and out in the world. Should make your life more effortless, preserving your time and energy for what matters most, like your family, your church. To accomplish this, Star Lincoln is committed to the owner experiences designed to do just that very thing. That's the Star Lincoln way. Look, there's no greater luxury than our time, and Lincoln provides us with an effortless way to service our Lincoln. Just schedule a time and place convenient to you, and they'll bring you a loaner vehicle when we pick up yours. Stop on by Hoot McInerney Star Lincoln and check out the new Navigator, the Aviator, the Corsair, Nautilus, and of course the Lincoln MKZ and the Lincoln Continental. Star Lincoln, 12 Mile Road and Telegraph in Southfield. It's the home of the Star treatment. I had an interesting situation, and I wrote it down because a friend of mine the other night, we went to dinner. We were talking about the podcast, and he was saying, biggest problem I have right now with the Catholic Church is the fact that laity seem to have too big a role for me. I would much prefer to receive the sacraments from a priest and not the laity. And count me in that group. I'd love to get your thoughts on that. And before we end this, make sure you tell me how someone gets into that position to be able to hand out communion at services.
Sure, we'll do that.
All right, let's start with, where do you want to start with?
Well, let me say this, that I also have friends that prefer to have the priest give out the communion. The only difficulty with that is that if the church is thriving, you're going to have a lot of people getting up to go to communion, and therefore it's going to be a long time before the last person receives communion, because there aren't that many priests that can give out the communion. And so usually for every Mass you have just the one priest, usually. I mean, there are times when you have concelebrated priests, and of course they will be able to do that too. The thing I want to mention is this, that very often very good holy people can become self-righteous. It's almost as if that they start thinking, who is she to give out communion? Or who is she who receives communion only on the tongue? You would think she was the Blessed Mother herself because she cannot receive communion in the hand. Or who is she or he? Because I noticed that guy, he's not the perfect individual. Well, there's a lot of people that are not perfect. All people are not perfect, okay? Mm-hmm. I don't think we can wait for the perfect person to give out communion.
I hope not.
No, it doesn't work that way. But anyway, all I'm saying is this. The church has set up programs to prepare people who would like to do that, who have some sort of a calling to be Eucharistic ministers, or I should put it this way, extraordinary ministers of the Eucharist. And so primarily they're used to bring communion to the homebound, because they're the ones that need it most, and so on. And the preparation is basically going over with them the reverence that they should have. They should be a good example to people in general. So I think we have to trust in the goodness of people, and also in the goodness of those people who prepare them. They will counsel people out if they're not fit, this type of thing. But again, if you want to find fault with someone, yes, you're going to find fault, because we all have faults. It doesn't matter who we are. We all are somewhat blemished. And so that if you want to say, oh, well, that guy's not perfect. Matter of fact, I even heard him cheat on his taxes, Well, yeah, you're going to see that. But I think we have to be able to put that stuff aside and try to trust that they're doing a good job. and that they're doing it sincerely, and that they really are helping out in the whole ministry of the church.
Is there a vetting process involved in that?
Yes, but I don't think it's as, they wouldn't call it a vetting process. There are a lot of people, I shouldn't say a lot, some people will show up for the meetings that are held to decide, what do we do? We need some help. Can you help? They'll make an announcement at the church, and then they'll pick an evening when these people could come to the church and speak with the pastor and talk with him about what is expected and so on and so forth.
So there's a recruiting process.
Yes, there is.
And what about those people that don't make the cut?
Well, you're not going to have, first of all, people, that's not the biggest thing on their agenda. They don't want to be bothered giving out communion. Maybe I'm being a little bit crass on that. You see, there's a schedule attached to it.
Yeah.
And people don't always like schedules. For example, if you are scheduled to be a Eucharistic minister for the 5 o'clock Mass on Sunday night, well, I don't think I want to go out Sunday night to do that. Or 10 o'clock or 7 in the morning on Sunday morning. So there is a schedule that goes along with that. And people would say, well, I would love to give out communion. As often as people would ask me, I'd go up and do it. Well, they're not supposed to just at random pick out people in the congregation. These are people that have been prepared to a certain extent. Of course, they don't have to do thousands of courses of theology, but they have to be prepared in some way. And so that they go through that process. They also have to be able to understand that there is a schedule that goes along with that. And if they're interested in doing that, and also bringing communion to the homebound.
Yes.
Those people that are in the nursing homes and so on.
I remember being in the hospital a number of times with various maladies, if you will, surgeries, not getting specific, but I do know that it required a stayover. And I do remember a knock on the door, and it would be somebody saying, would you like to receive, especially at Catholic hospitals.
Definitely, yeah.
Would you like to receive Holy Communion? And I would normally take it, of course.
Yeah.
But in my world, I'd much prefer a priest.
Yeah, but that's a luxury that we can't afford these days.
It's so sad to hear it's a luxury that we can no longer afford.
Yeah. Well, and I say no longer afford in the sense that you cannot have at every Mass,
I suppose it's
5 priests. You know what I'm saying?
But I suppose it's a good problem. But back in the day, we did. You just sort of waited like, oh boy, communion's going to take a while. I think the genesis of when people used to say, I'm going to get up there, I'm going to take communion, and I'm out of here.
Yes.
Do you remember those days?
I certainly do.
And I suspect they may still happen.
Yeah.
How long's it been around? Have laity been handing out communion?
Involved, yeah. I'm going to say till the mid-'60s or late 60s, 70s.
Yeah, I'm thinking a little later than that, maybe. I don't have a major issue with it. I would just prefer to get the Holy Eucharist from a priest, a Catholic priest.
You're not alone.
I know.
I know I have friends the same way, and it's very hard to even try to explain to them why it's necessary, because, well, you know that people become impatient. You just said that. In the past, people would wait for communion, and then they would just bolt out of the church.
Yeah.
Well, today there's enough diversity in the liturgy itself that, you have this hymn and that hymn, you have certain meditations, and so that I don't think there is that rush to get out. What I think it is happening, though, is at the other end of the Mass. When you have an 11 o'clock Mass, sometimes we say it's at 11:15 because at 11 o'clock is when they start coming in, and then they're still coming in at 10 after. And the other day, I was helping out with saying Mass at one of the parishes, and it was a 5 o'clock Mass on Saturday night. Sure enough, it was 5 o'clock, and wow, I said, where are the people?
Yeah.
It's empty.
15
minutes later, it was no longer empty.
It was packed.
It was, I don't know about packed, but certainly you had a big number of people in there that you never expected because they were still coming in. One of the jokes that I always have when I see a group of people coming in at once, I say, "Oh, the bus must have just let out." They just come in at once. So.
Has that become a more popular Mass, the 5 o'clock Saturday?
Well,
because that was groundbreaking at the time. Do you remember that?
Of course. Yeah.
That was a big deal.
Well, I guess where I am, we have a 5 o'clock on Saturday and one on Sunday.
Right.
So the one on Sunday, we use some contemporary music.
Right.
And it's not necessarily rock and roll, which is interesting, but it's contemporary. I'm not a musician, so I can't explain exactly what that means, but it's a contemporary gospel music that you may have heard. So people who like that kind of thing will be at the 5 o'clock Mass on Sunday. On Saturday, it's the regular 5 o'clock Mass anticipating Sunday. So
the profile of the person that goes to a Sunday Mass at 5 o'clock, I would think, I don't know, I guess the world centers around Ken Calvert here, but I would think that I would rather be home, having dinner, getting ready for 60 Minutes, and whatever else may be on TV, selfishly, as opposed to dropping everything, getting a little dressed up, and going to church at 5 o'clock.
I don't think everyone thinks like us. I feel the same way, by the way. 5 o'clock Mass on Sunday, to me, many of the churches have done away with it. But where I am, it's a very popular Mass, and so we do get a good number of people, and there are people that are okay with that. They figure it's almost the beginning of the week, the work week, It's the day before Monday, so they come with that mental attitude. So they come and they participate, and particularly since where I am, we have the contemporary music, and there are a lot of people that like that. It's amazing.
Well, but do other churches have that same sort of
I'm sure some
agenda?
Must.
Yeah.
Some must, but not. Well, many of them have done away with the 5 o'clock on Sunday. Mm-hmm. It used to be that almost every church had 5 o'clock on Sunday. Maybe it used to be called the Last Chance Mass. I don't know. They didn't make it on Saturday. They didn't make it most of Sunday, and so they figure maybe they could go at 5 on Sunday and still fulfill the obligation. So I don't know what to say to you, Ken. I have friends the same way. They would rather wait for the priest. Actually, you see this happening. It's not so subtle as you have two lines coming up for communion. The layman is giving it out on the left and the priest on the right.
Yeah.
Sure enough, they switch lines sometimes.
I was going to ask you that. Thank you.
That happens.
You stole my question.
Well, it happens.
Well, I'm sorry, but I would be one of those guys.
Yeah, but it doesn't happen all the time.
Yeah, but it's also not always just one person along with the priest. It could be up to 4.
Oh, definitely.
The priest and 3 more.
Definitely.
Especially when you take into account the wine. I would prefer, call me old-fashioned. I never thought I would, given the podcast here. In my case, I'd much prefer to take communion from you, Father Joe, than from my neighbor, Billy Joe. You know what I mean?
Well, you know what? It's interesting that the Catholic Church is Catholic, which means universal, as you well know, Ken. And the thing is this, that there are options. And people that like that kind of thing can choose a church that offers that. Whereas the church where I minister, basically, I don't see that as a problem anymore. It may have been at the beginning, but I don't see that at all as a problem. I don't even see the switching lines just so they could get the priest to give them communion.
Yeah, I think people have gotten used to it.
They've gotten used to it. But there are churches in the city of Detroit which offer that type of ministry. Not only that, I think you remember my saying that I helped out at a place, St. Cyril and Methodius. Well, there they do. Actually, they do a lot of the things that some people really like, and they go all the way out there. For example, any Mass at all, there's always a half hour of confessions ahead of time. Now, most places don't do that, but that place does. The other thing, too, is only the priest or the deacon can give out communion. And also, it's usually not given in the hand. It's given on the tongue or in tinction, either way. But the thing is this, that they try to hold fast to that.
They don't still use a paten, do they?
Oh, they do. If you're not, particularly if
you mean they go to a kneeler?
Oh, it's a kneeler. Oh, yes.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh.
But the paten is necessary for a couple of reasons.
So the host doesn't drop.
Yeah,
when I was an altar boy,
well, especially for intinction. When the priest does intinction, which is taking the host and dipping it into, half of it into the wine, the precious blood, and then distributing it, to the individual on the tongue, there is that danger that it falls. So there is a paten used when that is happening.
Wow.
As they say,
I didn't know that still existed. And
intinction. Well, as I said to you,
going back, by the way, folks, Long Lake and Ryan, for those of you listening around the world, is an area near us here in southeast Lower Michigan that is basically a little more
traditional.
Traditional, thank you.
Going back, to
okay.
It's a very beautiful church. There's no question.
And you were saying as well that that's a church where you can't leave until, there are 40 altar persons, boys and girls, that go out into the lobby and kneel until the priest releases them.
And prays with them, even there. Very traditional. That's not the way the other churches are in general. I'm speaking in general.
Yeah.
You're going to find individuals, for example, I know that near Eastern Market, which is another area in Detroit, and Eastern Market, there are a number of churches that are now becoming
destinations.
But that's besides the point. Now, I'm talking about the way they practice their liturgy.
Oh, okay.
So there's a couple of them there, for example, St. Joseph's, where they have a new group of priests that are taking over that particular parish. And the one parish that's there, there are 3 or 4, but I'm speaking about one, St. Joseph's. They do a traditional type of service, and I would guess that it's the priest that gives out the communion.
I would think so as well, yeah, because I have friends that like to do that on Sunday. Yeah. They're part of it's not necessarily the mass mobs, but rather they like to go downtown to go to mass.
And then go to brunch.
Yeah, that's a really good option. Yeah. So in conclusion, should people not push back so heavily on laity having a bigger role in the Catholic Church?
Yeah, I think the number of people that are trying to do that is minimal.
All right.
We don't have any indication of that happening in my church, okay? But in other churches, I'm sure there is. Catholic means universal, and it offers a lot of options for people where they feel comfortable in one way of celebrating liturgy as opposed to another. And so it's great that we have these different options. But the other thing I want to mention, which is also, in my mind, very important, is that very often good, holy people can become judgmental, self-righteous. These are not good things. In other words, we don't know what's in the heart of somebody else. And when we see so-and-so giving out communion, we shouldn't be judging. We don't know what's in that person's heart. And I think for us to make quick judgments about that and think that he's unworthy, how could he be giving out communion, or she's unworthy? I would say that we cannot come to quick judgments.
And on the flip side, that person, the laity, that has the responsibility of handing out the Eucharist shouldn't be a chest thumper. They should simply respect the position that they've been given.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Well, but Joe, sometimes people go, well, you know what I do on Sundays, don't you? They get a little Barney Fife in them.
Sure.
I'm the guy that's handing out the communion there, Barn.
I realize that. And of course, what you have to wonder is what other people think of that person if he speaks that way.
Yeah.
Because, again, that's something that I hope is gone by the wayside. People that consider themselves super special because they're giving out communion,
That's
they're
what I'm
no
saying.
better than anybody else.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then we, as the participants, should not be looking at them with judgment either. So it takes two.
Yeah. It's a really good discussion. I really enjoyed it. So thank you so much for joining us on the Father Joe Grimaldi podcast. I'm Ken Calvert. We'll see you next time.
I look forward to it. Thank you. This is Father Joe Grimaldi, and I look forward to seeing you next time on the Father Joe podcast.
If you'd like, you can email us. It's frjoepodcast@gmail.com. That's frjoepodcast@gmail.com. We're also on Facebook. Simply search Father Joe Grimaldi. And thanks for listening, everyone.